As you guys know, JD Vance has been completely out of it since the beginning of this war. And there's this funny trend that this pattern that I'm noticing with JD Vance. Anytime the Trump administration starts to go through a drought, they start to go through a period of sustained media criticism, he's nowhere to be found. During Operation Metro Surge and the drawdown in Minneapolis and the disaster with ICE, he goes out there, he takes all this heat for defending the killing of Renee Good, and then after that, after realizing what a disaster that entire situation was, he disappears off the face of the earth. Now we're in the middle of this war with Iran, and for the first 2 weeks, he was gone. Nowhere to be seen. He was in, I don't even remember where he was. He was at the Olympics or something. I don't even know. But he's been very quiet over the past few weeks. And obviously, he's doing this because, as you guys know, he is supposed to be the Republican nominee in 2028 to be the successor to Donald Trump. That's the idea. And so obviously, to maintain his credibility and to kind of distance himself from this war, he's trying to create this image, curate this mirage, this artifice that he is against this war. He has been in staunch opposition to it. And so he can kind of play both sides. He can say, well, if the war went good, I was loyal to Donald Trump. I supported him from the beginning. I never turned my back on him. But if the war goes poorly, he can say, well, I was always skeptical of it, and I never really supported the war, and I had my philosophical differences with the administration, and yada, yada, yada. So he's hedging. And this is what political leaders do all the time, especially people who are trying to become the president. They distance themselves from the bad things associated with the former administration and then embrace things that are positive about a former administration if they were a part of it. And so that is what JD Vance is doing. It's very obvious. And I wanted to react to this specific interview because, like I said, I want to hear what JD Vance has to say. We haven't heard anything from JD Vance on this war. We have this nothing burger, and this is from a few days ago, and it says Donald Trump makes bold comment about JD Vance. It says, during his appearance at his golf club in Doral, Florida, Donald Trump spoke to the reporters about JD Vance's stance on the ongoing U.S.-Israeli war with Iran. He revealed that the vice president was, quote, philosophically a little bit different than me, unquote, during the early days of the war. However, he appeared to clarify that there have been no potential disagreements between the duo over it. According to the Seattle Times, Trump admitted that Vance was maybe less enthusiastic about going into the war. Nevertheless, he believes that the decision he took to conduct airstrikes on Iran was necessary and that he had no option. These comments come amid the initial silence from Vance, who rose to prominence as an anti-interventionist regarding the latest conflict. The vice president expressed uncertainty about Trump's decision regarding the Iran conflict in earlier conversations with the Washington Post. However, he also touched upon the possibility of Trump ordering another round of strikes while confidently maintaining that it might not turn into a prolonged conflict. He said, the idea that we're going to be in a Middle Eastern war for years with no end in sight, there is no chance that will happen. So this is what we just listen to this. Oh, sorry, I just saw this out of the corner of my eye. We got to finish reading this. This is hysterical. He says, or it says earlier, Vance also criticized the foreign policy approach linked to Kamala Harris, stating that the United States should withdraw its role in interventions abroad. He stated, quote, when people like Kamala Harris send our sons and daughters, our young people to fight in stupid wars, it is the young generation that carries the burden of that. We're going to stop sending our young people to faraway lands. We are not the policemen of the world. So that's JD Vance. That is what JD Vance had to say about Kamala Harris. Let's read that one more time. This is so rich. He says, when people like Kamala Harris send our sons and daughters, our young people, to fight in stupid wars, it is the young generation that carries the burden of that. We're going to stop sending our young people to faraway lands. We are not the policemen of the world. Okay. And this is exactly what Tulsi Gabbard, this is exactly what Stephen Miller were saying. Kamala's going to send your sons to war. No war with Iran, they said. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard was literally selling merch that said no war with Iran on it. And what happened last year? We had the annual threat assessment from 2025. As a matter of fact, I'll pull it up. 25 annual threat assessment DNI. It is literally on a government website. We have the whole thing right here. Annual threat assessment of the U.S. intelligence community. Office of the Director of National Intelligence from March 2025. Now let's go to the Iran section. This is straight from the U.S. government. Straight from the U.S. government. What does it say about Iran? Let's go down here. Let's see, nuclear weapon. See, this is what this is what makes me laugh. And it says right here on page 26, WMDs, it says, quote, "We continue to assess Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and that Khamenei has not reauthorized the nuclear weapons program he suspended in 2003. In the past year, there has been an erosion of a decades-long taboo on discussing nuclear weapons in public that has emboldened nuclear weapons advocates within Iran's decision-making apparatus. However, Khamenei remains the final decision-maker over Iran's nuclear program, to include any decision to develop nuclear weapons." But it says here in the opening sentence, "We continue to assess Iran is not building a nuclear weapon." That is straight from the annual threat assessment. It is literally at dni.gov. And now here we are in the middle of this war with Iran, ostensibly over their nuclear weapon, which is totally irrelevant at this point. We're not even talking about nuclear weapons now. We're talking about overthrowing the government. And even after this annual threat assessment came out from the person that Trump appointed, he still, in multiple interviews, I remember it, he said, when being asked by reporters, Tulsi Gabbard, the DNI, they said Iran is not building a nuclear weapon. Why are we going to war with Iran? He said he doesn't trust them. Oh, she doesn't know what she's talking about. I don't trust her. I know things she doesn't know, and so on and so forth. So what happened? What happened to no new wars? What happened to Kamala's going to send your children to die? We've had 13 servicemen and women be killed since the start of this war. And Trump is the one calling the shots. Trump is the one who started this conflict. So just blatant hypocrisy. And then on top of that, we're sending 2,500 more Marines, 5,000 military personnel, 2,500 Marines, all to the Middle East. What for? An amphibious landing? So these people are coming on the USS New Orleans, the USS Tripoli, the USS, I forgot what the other one is, but they're coming on three separate warships to form an amphibious ready group using the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit, and these people specialize in sea-to-land invasions to occupy or take over a coastline or secure an island. Those people are just going to be sitting ducks. Who ordered this? Who authorized this? Trump. Trump is the one who is authorizing all of this. So anyways, I'm curious to see how J.D. Vance and Donald Trump try to spin this to the media. I will say this, though. So, and just to recap, because this is very important, we need to talk about all that's going on right now at this conflict, all the political fallout. I mean, this is becoming a disaster for Trump. This is going to become an albatross if the course is not corrected immediately. And it's going to become an albatross for everybody in this administration, everybody that's signed off on this. So let me just say this. In the opening days of the war, during phase 1, it looked like the United States was destroying Iran. And I guess we'll just recap very briefly. So Phase one, it was we're going to attack command and control, we're going to attack their air defense systems, we're going to shut down their surface-to-air missile capability. And so that's what they did. In a matter of a week, the United States was able to decrease drone strikes by 83%. They were able to decrease missile strikes by 90%. They were able to wipe out about 80% of Iran's air defense systems and 50 to 60% of their surface-to-air missile launch platforms. And it looked like we were completely wiping them out conventionally. Their air defenses, their offensive and defensive capabilities, their conventional military, their ships, their air force, all of these things were being completely decimated by the United States. Their radars, their comms, their command and control, the top ranks of their leadership. We completely blitzed them, caught them off guard, and hit them really hard in the opening days of the war. And after that, the United States was able to pretty quickly assert air dominance. And so what was phase two? Well, after you knock out their offensive and defensive capabilities, you get rid of their surface-to-air missile launch platforms, you get rid of their air defense systems, their radars, you wipe out their command and control, the country is effectively exposed. And so then you can go in and drop bombs on their storage facilities, on their missile production facilities, on their drone production facilities, and really neutralize the country, render it obsolete. They can't respond offensively if they don't have any missiles, if they don't have any drones, if they don't have any surface-to-air missile launch platforms. Well, here is where the United States went wrong, and here's when things went south. So immediately after this war started, Iran started shutting down the Strait of Hormuz, effectively. They didn't officially declare a blockade, but it was a de facto closure of the strait. And since March 1st, or I guess between March 1st and March 12th, they hit about 18, I believe, commercial vessels carrying oil, carrying petrochemicals, carrying fertilizer. And this immediately started to have consequences for the world economy. China, Japan, South Korea, our allies in NATO, our allies in Western Europe, immediately started to feel the consequences of this constriction of the global energy supply. And so we were looking down the barrel of a global energy crisis. And that was the situation that we found ourselves in. And the reason why was because even though we were able to wipe out and completely dominate Iran using conventional military means, Iran thrives asymmetrically with their proxies, with their underground missile cities, with their mobile missile launch platforms that they can move in between bases, with their drones. They have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of them, if not more. They make more in a day than they use in a day. We're talking about their $35,000 Shahed drones. Of course, on top of that, they get re-engineered versions of these things from Russia. They get precursor materials to build missiles from China. And so they have all these, they have a huge stockpile of missiles, huge stockpile of drones. They have proxies, they have underground missile facilities, they have mines, they can use economic warfare. And then on top of that, they have a mosaic defense, which is to say they have a decentralized command structure in all 31 provinces of the country. So even if you take out the top 50 guys in the IRGC, they have leadership spread out all across the country with leadership going 3 ranks deep. Even if you kill the top one guy or the leader in Khuzestan or Elam or any province in Iran, there is already people waiting to take the next person's place going 3 ranks deep. So it makes it incredibly difficult to wipe them out just by picking off the top leaders because they have this spread out, decentralized command structure. They call it a mosaic defense. And so because Iran thrives fighting asymmetrically and they have a massive stockpile of missiles, massive stockpile of drones, they have some economic support from China and Russia, and they have the ability to shut down the Strait of Hormuz, it's going to take a long time to completely decimate this regime and neutralize the IRGC. And that is the situation that we find ourselves in now. And this is from the Wall Street Journal. And it says here, at this point, some U.S. officials and analysts say Trump has 3 imperfect options. Number 1, he could end the U.S. role in the war, preventing a wider conflict but emboldening a hardline Iranian regime that will claim victory and try to rebuild its arsenal. The president could continue the war, further decimating Iran, but risk adding to the total of 13 killed American service members as energy prices surge. Or, number 3, the United States and Israel could stop bombing now, but plan to resume military strikes against Iran every year or so to keep it weak, starting a perpetual cycle of on and off war. These are the 3 options that Trump has. And like I said, we are winning tactically. We are hitting their law enforcement command. We are hitting their leadership. There's a report now that we just killed Ali Larijani, who is like the top national security guy in Iran. We're hitting their besieged military bases. We're hitting their civilian police. We're hitting their weapons depots in Andhra Abbas. We're hitting their aviation, private companies. We're hitting their defense companies. We just bombed Karg Island. We are obviously dominating them on the battlefield tactically, but their strategic equation has remained the same. And it is in this context that Donald Trump is begging NATO allies to help him reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Because, like it says here, he has 3 options, really. Number 1 is he could escalate the conflict. And by escalating the conflict, that means bombing them harder, bombing them more frequently, bombing oil infrastructure, putting ground troops in the country, and trying to occupy the coastline of Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. But of course, doing that would be widely unpopular. This is already a betrayal, but this would be the final nail in the coffin if he puts boots on the ground, and we're leaving our people as sitting ducks to be hit by this regime. And this would be wildly dangerous, putting boots on the ground to occupy the coastline to force the Strait of Hormuz open. That could be a disaster. That's number 1. And we already had the Energy Secretary Chris Wright come out and say in a 60 Minutes interview that there are no options to supplicate or circumvent or circumnavigate, I guess, this blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. No policy, no tax incentive, nothing. The only thing that will, take the place or ease pressure on the global economy is getting oil flowing back through the strait. No releasing of oil reserves. There's nothing you can do. You got to get the strait open. Nothing else will offset the damage that's being done to the global economy. So like I said, the first one is force the Strait of Hormuz reopen, but risk taking heavier casualties. That's the first option. Then the second option you have is ending the conflict right here. Trump comes back to the United States, tries to spin this to the media and says, this was a strategic victory. We got their supreme leader. We degraded the IRGC. We wiped out their leadership. We destroyed their military. And he can try to find a way to rebrand this operation as a win when everybody kind of knows that's not the case and that this is business left unfinished. Because while we're not bombing them, they're rebuilding. While we're not bombing them, they're strategizing and preparing for the next conflict. And on top of that, we've rallied the country around the flag. We've rallied the country around the regime. So those are the first 2 options: escalate the war, occupy the country, put ground troops on Iranian territory. The second option is call it a day, try to rebrand this as a win, even though everybody knows it's not, and leave this situation unresolved. And then the third option is what the Israelis call mowing the grass, where we repeatedly go into the country and kill leadership, sabotage their infrastructure, undermine their sovereignty, bomb oil facilities, bomb the Ministry of Defense, bomb the private residences of IRGC members. And this is called mowing the grass, or limited intervention in IR terms. So those are our 3 options. And like it says here, none of them are really ideal. And if Iran continues to keep the Strait of Hormuz effectively shut down or blockaded, or they prevent U.S. or U.S. allies from accessing the strait and having commercial vessels be sent through, it's going to disproportionately affect U.S. allies and the United States. The people who are still allowed to receive commercial vessels are Iranian allies, China, India, Pakistan. But if there is no ceasefire, if there is no end of the hostilities, this is going to be a low boil for the foreseeable future. And this approach to shocking the entire global economy, I mean, Iran could effectively do that whenever they so choose. And so this is the situation we're in. Trump only has 3 options. None of them are good. And now he's begging his allies in NATO to help him reopen the strait. And this is what it says. This is from Reuters. It says Trump called on nations to help police the strait after Iran responded to U.S.-Israeli attacks by using drones, missiles, and mines to effectively close the channel for tankers that normally transport a fifth of global oil and liquefied natural gas. Germany, Spain, and Italy were among allies that ruled out participating in any mission in the Gulf, at least for now. Other countries were more circumspect, with Britain and Denmark saying they would consider ways that might help, but emphasizing a need to de-escalate and avoid getting dragged into the war. I mean, the UK effectively said something to the effect of, we are examining options to de-escalate the war and ensure freedom of navigation through the Strait of Hormuz. This very political, non-committal, nothing response. It says, what does Donald Trump expect a handful or 2 handfuls of European frigates to do in the Strait of Hormuz that the powerful U.S. Navy cannot do? German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius said in Berlin on Monday, as he downplayed threats by Trump that failing to come to Washington's aid could have consequences for the NATO alliance. He said, this is not our war. We have not started it. The conflict has nothing to do with NATO and Germany, and we have no plans to be drawn into it. German government spokesperson Stefan Cornelius said, neither the United States nor Israel consulted us before the war, and Washington explicitly stated at the outset of the war that European assistance was neither necessary nor desired, the spokesperson said. Spain said it would not do anything that could escalate the conflict, while Italian Deputy Prime Minister Matteo Salvini said sending military ships to a war zone would be interpreted as joining the war. He said Italy is not at war with anyone, and sending military ships in a war zone would mean entering the war, he told reporters in Milan. So this is where we are. This is where we are. We are facing a global energy crisis. I mean, we're arguably already in one. Petrochemicals are more expensive. Gas is more expensive. Oil is more expensive. I mean, liquefied natural gas is more expensive. Fertilizer is more expensive. As a consequence, diesel, oil for, airliners, shipping, trucking, all that's more expensive. Gas at the pump is more expensive. Wheat, grain, rice, all of that is more expensive. Packaging, manufacturing is more expensive. Shipping, trucking, more expensive. Who has to deal with the consequences of that? The consumers. Electronics are more expensive. Cars are more expensive. And this is all because the Strait of Hormuz is being blockaded effectively. And it's in this context that Trump is begging his allies in Europe and in East Asia to force the strait reopened, and nobody is coming to his aid. And this is the thing. Trump looks insane. He looks crazy. He looks nuts, like a madman. The whole world is judging him. The whole world thinks this guy is off his rocker. And it's sad, but seriously, there was a point in time when Trump was funny, charismatic, likable, it was cute in a sense. And I mean cute, like cheeky. It was cheeky. It was funny. It was edgy. Now it's just, he's deluded. He's totally deluded. Like disconnected from reality. Psychosis level behavior. And he's just totally lost the plot. Completely lost the plot. And so anyways, last thing I'll read before we get into it, because I don't want to spend too much time on this. And this is just the last thing I'll read before we get into this interview. So it says here, this is from the Wall Street Journal once again. It says 2 weeks in, and this is what I've been saying on the channel for almost 2 weeks now. It says 2 weeks in, the war in the Persian Gulf has become an asymmetric contest, pitting the unrivaled conventional military might of the United States and Israel against an Iranian government waging a guerrilla fight to block oil shipments and upend the global economy. The Americans and Israelis quickly took control of Iran's skies and have used thousands of airstrikes to pummel the country's leadership and its armed forces, destroying much of the Navy and its ability to launch long-range missiles. But the past century has shown that even the world's largest and most modern militaries can be humbled when attacking tenacious adversaries willing to endure more pain to defend their territory despite overwhelming odds. Tehran has taken control of the Strait of Hormuz, using far less sophisticated weaponry than the United States has unleashed, and can now choke energy supplies and commercial shipping through the vital waterway. The goal? To drain the U.S. into a war of economic attrition, inflicting pain on America and its allies around the world. And it's so obvious. It says Iranian forces have struck at least 16 commercial ships since the war began, sending oil prices above $100 a barrel, and prompting predictions of longer-term dislocations as a significant chunk of the world's oil and natural gas comes off the market. Tehran's vast arsenal of drones, short-range rockets, sea mines, and other arms makes it easy to attack ships in the narrow strait, and shipping lines and mariners have largely decided not to risk death or financial loss by running the gauntlet. So, I mean, this is where we are. We are fighting this attritional war, and the cost to benefit ratio is not in our favor. Like I said, even if we're winning tactically, cost to benefit, we are losing. It is costing us more than we're benefiting from it in terms of relocating missile interceptors and THAAD systems, sending more personnel there, sending more aircraft carriers there, spending, several billions of dollars a day, keeping this operation going. It's tanking the global economy, and it's not really costing Iran that much to do it. They're using cheap drones, mines, cheap missiles, submarines. And so this is the situation we're in. And like I said, it seems like it's a total disaster, total miscalculation from Trump. And there isn't any real good off-ramp. He has 3 really shitty options. And what's funny about this is, think about the irony of it. This is the last thing I'll say. Think about the irony of this. What were we told? We were told no new wars, no forever wars. I know I'm beating a dead horse, but it bears repeating. No forever wars. And now we have reports that Trump is actually considering a strategic doctrine of mowing the grass. Mowing the grass. For those of you who are not aware, mowing the grass is what Israel does with Hamas. That's their strategic doctrine. We have these intermittent periods where we go into the Gaza Strip, kill a bunch of civilians. We kill 2,000 Palestinians, several hundred women, several hundred children, and like 300 Hamas militants. That's mowing the grass, and it keeps the country in the state of perpetual war against their adversaries. And that is the definition of forever war. Mowing the grass is literally the doctrine of forever war. We have to repeatedly go back in and hit them harder. Go back in and hit critical infrastructure. Go back in and kill their leadership. That is textbook forever war doctrine. Textbook forever war strategy. So this idea from JD Vance, we're not doing forever wars. Dude, you guys are literally in the process of implementing a mowing the grass doctrine against Iran. What are you talking about? No forever war. So anyways, whole thing is a betrayal. And I've been saying this from the start, and I feel so vindicated. I feel so glad. I feel so happy that I was, from the very beginning, opposed to this and saying that this was going to be a disaster from the very beginning. And here we are, totally vindicated. But anyways, with that said, we're going to go ahead and get into this Interview. Let's see what Trump and Vance have to say.
Look, I think that I know what you're trying to do, Phil. You're trying to drive a wedge.
Turn up the volume a little bit.
Members of the administration, between me and the president. What the president said consistently, going back to 2015, and I agreed with him, is that Iran should not have a nuclear weapon. We have taken this military action under the president's leadership. I think all of us, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, should pray for its success and pray for the safety of our troops. That's the approach that I've taken. Make it as successful as possible.
So there's no hesitation, given your past statements, with the current operation?
What do you mean there's no hesitation with my past statements?
Given your skepticism of foreign adventurism, you were a critic of the global war on terror previously.
Well, I think one big difference, Phil, is that we have a smart president, whereas in the past we've had dumb presidents, and I trust President Trump to get the...
Okay, like, all right, buddy, you have knee pads on down there, or what's going on? Like, you know, just unzip it at this point, bro. Jesus. Talk about glaze. Oh, every other president was stupid. We have a smart president now. Like, do you hear yourself? What vice president talks like this? It's like, he literally speaks. This is the funny thing. He literally talks as if he's trying to get retweets from Cat Turd and Captive Dreamer on Twitter. That's how he sounds. Like, he speaks, he has such a chud aura. Oh, every other US president was stupid, but the president we have now is the smartest guy on earth. It's like, okay, buddy, zip it up when you're finished. Jesus. It's like, this guy has no negative aura. My goodness.
Phil, is that we have a smart president, whereas in the past we've had dumb presidents, and I trust President Trump to get the job done, to do a good job for the American people, and to make sure that the mistakes of the past aren't repeated. Absolutely.
Thanks, sir.
Look, JD's been great, but here's the simple thing, and I have, some people, I don't want wars. I want wars less than almost anybody. Peace through strength. But you know what? I've watched Iran for a long time. I've called them out 20 years ago when I was a civilian that liked watching the world. And they're violent, vicious people. The leadership, violent, vicious people. They killed 32,000 protesters over the last 3 weeks. They put out...
That's just fake. That's not real. That's literally just propaganda. And many of those protesters were armed insurgents. It wasn't 32,000. We don't have independent verification of that. We have many different numbers from Fox News to CNN to MSNBC to CBS, of course, CBS. No independent verification whatsoever. We don't have any details on the context of these protests, what made these protests start. They seemingly came out of nowhere, literally nowhere. Like, 2025 ends, we don't hear anything about these Iranian protests. Then January comes, and all of a sudden, there's thousands of people protesting all across Iran. And this is happening as we're sending aircraft carriers to the region. What a coincidence. What a coincidence that the regime kills 30,000 people, random protesters, by the way, as we are initiating the largest military buildup in the Middle East since Iraq. What a funny coincidence that is. So no, I don't buy this 30,000 protesters bullshit. I think it's a lie. It's a total fabrication. Until those numbers are independently verified, I think it's just a lie. And like I said, Trump lies about everything. Trump, he never says the truth. He lies about literally everything. He lied about the Manab school bombing, which was obviously the United States doing that. He lied about it on multiple occasions, several times, before eventually coming out and just owning up to it. This man is a pathological liar. So no, fuck these people. These people need to be deposed and thrown in prison. Like, that's how I feel right now, at this point. These people are a disgrace.
A memo 2 days ago saying, if you protest, we will shoot you and kill you in the streets. And somebody said, oh, there's not that many protests. Well, first of all, there are bombs going off all over the place. But even if there weren't, who's going to do that? Who's going to do it? They don't have any guns, and the other ones have latest in line machine gun, right? And every form of gun you can.
It's just too random. I'm sorry. Those protests were too random for me to feel like that was organic in any sense.
They shoot them right through the middle of the head. They're violent people. If they had a nuclear weapon, they would use it. And sometimes I'll have some of the people that, feel very strongly, like I do about wars,
If they had a nuclear weapon, they would use it. This is just neocon talking points. What's funny is that as much as I do not think Iran should have a nuclear weapon, I'm totally opposed to that. I think we should remain the doctrine of deterrence on Iran. No strategic nuclear weapon. But the irony of it is this, and here's the funny part. It does seem as though when a country gets a nuclear weapon, they actually behave more responsibly. North Korea, Pakistan, India. You know, it's not as if when countries get a nuclear weapon, all of a sudden they use it, because then you lose all your legitimacy. So, no, I think that the nuclear weapons thing that's just a talking point. Oh, they're gonna use it to blow up the whole world and kill America. That's just like total hogwash. It's just total hogwash.
And I say, do you think Iran is violent, and do you think their people are violent? Yes, leadership. Do you think they should have a nuclear weapon, which is massive power? I don't even want to discuss how powerful, because it's depressing. And they said, no, they shouldn't have. Definitely they shouldn't have. They said, and you don't want to fight war? No, we don't want to fight war. So these are naive people that frankly are stupid. If you believe that Iran should have a nuclear weapon, there's something wrong with you.
Nobody's saying they should have a nuclear weapon. No, nobody has said that. Like, nobody's saying they should have a nuclear weapon. They're saying we shouldn't put boots on the ground in Iran. We shouldn't destroy and bomb the country and try to overthrow their government and create this massive humanitarian disaster. That's what people are saying, that we should do diplomacy. It's just totally insane.
They would use it the only question is within 1 hour if they get it, or 1 day. They will use it, and they will blow up the entire Middle East, not just Israel. They'll start with Israel, but they will blow up. And you got to see that when they unexpectedly started sending missiles to every country within 1,000 miles of them. I mean, they're blowing up countries that were neighbors. Not necessarily.
Because they're hosting military bases. What do you mean? Yeah, obviously, all of these countries are vassal states to the United States. Saudi Arabia, Jordan, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, UAE, or I'm sorry, Bahrain, Kuwait. All these countries are U.S. puppets. So, and they have military bases, so it's fair play. Like, I don't understand the point he's making.
There's some friends. They actually were blowing up some friends. They were blowing up the people that handle their accounts. They're sending thousands of missiles into countries that didn't expect to be in the war because they wanted to take over the Middle East. And if I didn't terminate Barack Hussein Obama's horrible Iran nuclear deal, which I did in my first...
They had to do it to put pressure on the United States, by the way. The only reason they're hitting the Gulf countries is because these countries are massive investors in the United States. They give massive amounts of energy to the United States and Europe. And the only way to defeat the United States and Israel, two countries, by the way, fighting against one, two nuclear-armed countries fighting against one country with Soviet-era jets and Soviet-era tanks and no modern military, the only way to beat that is to fight asymmetrically, to attack critical infrastructure in the... What did he think? They were going to fight fair? That these countries weren't going to be hit? Like, he's just so insane. He's so deluded. It's hard to listen. It's hard to take him seriously. It's just sad. He's so deluded. He's so deluded. I'm sorry.
First term, one of the dumbest deals, perhaps the dumbest deal, because of the danger involved. You would have had them have a nuclear weapon 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. They would have used it, blown up the Middle East, and they would have then come after us. And if these gorgeous B-2 bombers, give me that bomber, Andrew. Let me just hug that little sucker. Give me that bomber over there. Thank you. You knew immediately which one. This looks small, but in person it's very big. Because it's the only plane capable of carrying a 200,000-pound bomb. So I don't know how they do it. because it's very sleek and nice, but it carries a lot of weapons and there's a lot of bombs. But had I not sent this incredible machine times numerous others to hit Iran at midnight with no moon, dead dark, every single bomb was dropped right down the chute that it was supposed to hit. How they do it, who knows? Nobody else can figure. No other country can do it. No other country has our military or even close. And I think we've probably proven that with Venezuela and now with because we have done a number in Iran. But if I didn't do that, if I didn't decimate, I call it their nuclear dust, they would have had a nuclear weapon within 1 month after that bombing took place. And they would have used it on first Israel.
That's just not true. That's just patently false. That is just not true. Do you guys know how long it takes to build a nuclear weapon? First, people don't understand the technicalities of this because, people just look at the surface level things and assume that that's all there is to it. It took North Korea, even after because North Korea didn't even get a uranium bomb, they got a plutonium bomb. Even after they had the necessary precursors to create a nuclear weapon, it still took them decades to assemble one. You have to, like a proper nuclear weapon where you have an ICBM, or I guess not even an ICBM, but you have a ballistic missile with a payload, and you've miniaturized the nuclear material so that it can fit inside the payload. And then you have all the right internal navigations, and you have all the right, stuff, the right, because there's a re-entry thing that you have to do when you send a ballistic missile. The re-entry vehicle is what it's called. There's so much technical stuff that you have to do to test a nuclear bomb, to figure out the science behind it, to put it on a payload, to miniaturize it, like all these different things you have to figure out with a nuclear weapon before you can use it on the battlefield effectively. And there's a gun type nuke, there's different kinds of, I forget all of it. It's been a long time since I've brushed up on the actual nuclear science. I haven't looked at this since summer of last year. It's been so long, but the actual process is very intricate. It's not like you just get 60% nuclear or highly enriched uranium, you stuff it inside a ballistic missile, then you send it up and drop it and it detonates. That's not how that works. There's an actual internal nuclear reaction that needs to happen while the missile is being fired in order for the nuclear explosion to even occur. And this takes, years of testing. It took North Korea decades, before they were able to successfully launch their first nuclear weapon. It took them more than 15, I think, years, even after they got the plutonium necessary to do it. It still took them more than 15 years before they actually had one that was ready for use. So no, this idea that, they were a week away from it and they were going to have one, no, that's just a lie. That's just a complete lie. Scientifically, it's a lie. If you look at the intelligence, it's a lie. Trump just lies about literally everything. There's not a single thing that he will not lie about. Not a single thing. He's a total con man. And so when he talks about they were a week away from the weapon, we already read through the threat assessment from 2025, page 26, it says Iran is not building a nuclear weapon. That is what it says. So, anyways, I just can't believe I'm being lied to like this. It's incredible.
In the Middle East. And you know that because all of those missiles that were launched against their neighbors were set long ago, long before they knew they would be using them this quickly. Had we not done this, you would have had a nuclear war that would have evolved into World War III. And more important, this is a war that there would have been.
I feel like it doesn't even need to be said that's just total crap. Like, that's just total crap.
Nothing left. So we've done a great thing. The people that say it's okay for a very sick ideology, a very sick country in terms of its leadership. Very good people, great people. But the people that say that, I think they're actually, they're either evil or they're stupid. So if you believe that Iran should not have a nuclear weapon, they should not have it.
So apparently, if you think the United States should not get involved in a regime change war with Iran, you're evil or stupid. Wow, thanks, Trump. Do you guys know what evil means? People throw this word around a lot, and I really don't like it. People throw the word around, you're evil, that's evil. Do you know what the definition of evil is? To be evil is to be profoundly wicked, immoral, or malevolent. It is to be exceptionally immoral, malevolent, and wicked. That is what it means to be evil. Exceptionally immoral, exceptionally wicked, exceptionally malevolent. So we are evil. We are profoundly wicked. We are profoundly immoral and profoundly malevolent because we don't want our servicemen and women dying in a war with Iran. We're the wicked ones? Really? We're evil? Does this guy hear himself? Who does this person think? Who does he think he is? It's just totally, like I said, totally deluded, this man.
Then you have
off
to
his rocker.
Absolutely love what I've done, because in 2 weeks we have decimated them. They have no Navy. They have no Air Force. They have no anti-aircraft weapons. They have no leadership. The leadership is gone. But then they set up a new leadership to go and name a new leader, and that leadership is gone. And now they think maybe the sun is gone. They're all gone. My biggest problem is I have no idea who we're talking to, because nobody ever heard of any of these people. They're all dead. But we did a job for the world, not a job for us, for the whole world. We took the worst country in 50 years and maybe longer from the ideological standpoint, a country that wanted to blow up the world, a country that is sick, and it has a religious fervor. And when you add religion, you know, people don't realize more people died in religious wars than every other war put together. And that's what you would have had here.
It's funny that he says that, which is true. It's funny that he says that, though, when his Secretary of Defense literally has Deus Vult, the second or third, probably third, most powerful person in this administration. I would say it goes Trump, Rubio, and then Hegseth, or I guess maybe fourth. It would be Trump, Vance, Rubio, and Hegseth. Although that's debatable. When the third or fourth most powerful person in this administration, and by default in the country, has a Deus Vult Crusader tattoo on his chest, and this person is running our Middle East policy, this person is motivated by religious fervor. He's a Christian Zionist. We have clips of this guy from 2018, Secretary Pete Kegsbreath. This guy, that's funny. I heard that from Kyle Kalinske. I like that. Pete Kegsbreath, we have videos of him. As a matter of fact, I reacted to this yesterday. We have clips of him from 2018 saying we need to rebuild the third temple. He said it was a miracle in 1917, a miracle in 1948, a miracle in 2017. What's to say we can't have another miracle by rebuilding the third temple? This guy is running the military. What are we talking about? When you mix religion with war, it makes it worse. Yeah, obviously. But you're the one who made a religious fanatic your Secretary of Defense. So what do you mean? We're the ones who are saying that. Trump is the one who's appealing to these insane evangelicals. You know, these are the people who are in the military. John Larson wrote about this on Substack a week and a half ago. It's like the pot calling the kettle black. It's just littered with hypocrisy. It's just so rich.
And it was a terrible thing. I'm very proud of what we did. And I think JD understands better than most. If you give Iran a nuclear weapon, at least a very substantial part of the world would be blown up, and it'll be used almost immediately. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. President.
You don't mind if I keep this
It's
here,
just
do you?
false.
Isn't that a beautiful thing?
Just
You know,
so
I used to
false.
look at it, and I said, it's a piece of art, but how can it be effective? It's so stealth. Think of it, Peter. 1 in the morning, it flies in, and they say, sir, they're in Iranian airspace. And I say, oh, and I'm watching it from the Situation Room with a couple of other very smart people, including some good generals, real generals, not television generals. And all of a sudden you see that dive, they start diving, and sure, and you see him 30,000, 20,000. Boy, I said, that was a lot. They went down fast to aim it. And they know they're coming, and they're smart, and they never saw them. And they're firing a little bit, but they don't know what they're firing at because they can't see a thing. And then you hear the biggest explosions that anybody's ever heard. Those are the biggest bombs. Outside of nuclear, those are the biggest bombs. And you say, what technology we have. What a great country. I built it, largely, I built it during my first term. I built it. I didn't know I'd have to use it this much in my second term. But we had an incompetent president. We had an incompetent administration. And if that group of people, in any form, whether it's Kamala, him, it doesn't matter, would have had another 4 years, we would have had no country left. Yeah, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. You say you're doing a job for the rest of the world. In your conversations with your counterparts, are they thanking you? What are their conversations like when you talk about this military conflict that's taking place in Iran?
Well, they should be thanking me because many of them get 90%. China, as an example, should be thanking us, but I don't expect to thank you, but they should be thanking us. Japan gets 95%, China 91%. Many of the countries, South Korea gets a tremendous percentage of their oil and therefore their energy from the Straits, or as they call it, the Strait. And they should be not only thanking us, they should be helping us. What does surprise me is that they're not eager.
But oh my, it was fine before you start. It was fine for them before you started the war. What does he not understand? He is the one who created this mess. He is the one who created this mess. It is not their responsibility to then clean it up. It is not Japan or South Korea or China's responsibility to clean up the mess you made. I mean, his moral sensibilities are completely just out of touch with reality. Like, anyway, I don't want to belabor it, but just like, bro, like, get real. So let me get this straight. China and Japan and South Korea are going to waste assets. They're going to waste time. They're going to waste energy. They're going to waste money trying to fix a situation that was totally fine before you got involved. The Straits of Hormuz before February 28th were open. Energy was flowing. Gas prices were low. Oil was at like $69, $68 a barrel. And everything was fine for Japan, South Korea, China. Then you launch this unprovoked war of choice on Iran and fuck everybody over. And now they have to waste their own resources and money to come fix a situation that was fine before you made it bad. And he's going to blame them and point the finger at them. This is what I'm talking about. Everybody around the world is looking at him like this narcissistic, ego-driven, deranged old man he's out of it. He's just totally out of it. It just, I don't understand. Like, listening to this, it's just the delusion it's palpable.
There are a couple. We'll be announcing some names soon. There are some that really were right up front.
Who?
I would announce their name now, other than maybe they prefer it not
That's
being
just
announced.
fake. That's just not true.
I will say this: it's a lot easier to get people today than it was 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, before
like I said, we can't forget Trump lies about literally everything. There's not a single thing Trump doesn't lie about. So no.
Destroyed there before he obliterated the country, before we took out, because they're down to about 8% of their missiles. They're down to a small portion of their drones. and we've demolished many of their factories where they make the missiles and the drones, and the rest are all following. Our military has been amazing. We hit Karg Island, took out every single thing in Karg Island except one thing. We left the pipes, because if we take out the pipes, it takes a long time to build them. And at some point, something is going to happen that's positive with respect to those pipes. But there are some countries that greatly disappointed me. And, you know, I'm the one that got them to pay from 2% to 5% of GDP, NATO. And I get along great with those countries. And
I just don't get it. It's like Trump thinks he can bully our allies. He thinks he can bully Germany. He thinks he can bully Europe. He thinks he can bully the Netherlands. He thinks he can bully Japan, bully South Korea. Like, who does he think he is? I'm glad that these people are standing up to him. No. They need to have their own foreign policy. Just no. We can't, everybody can't accommodate his sickness.
But I always said, you know, the problem with NATO
Nor should they.
We'll always be there for them, but they'll never be there for us. And when I hear the UK, which was sort of considered the Rolls Royce of allies, right? When you say they were the oldest and they were going to be there. And I say it would be really helpful if you'd send over a couple of ships, and if you have some minesweepers, which they do, it'd be very helpful. And the Prime Minister is a nice man. I think he's a very nice guy. He says, well, I'd like to ask my team. I said, you don't have to worry about a team. You don't have a team. You're the Prime Minister. You can make a decision. Well, I have to speak to my people. I said, you don't have to speak to anybody. So it was very disappointing. And then after we obliterated them and destroyed their military, the whole thing, and it became a much safer zone, he said, we're going to send over 2 aircraft carriers. I said, I don't want them anymore. I don't want them after we win. I want them before we start. I don't need your aircraft carriers after we've already won.
Do you hear this? Like, do you hear how he sounds? So the prime, and I don't know how he says these things, and like, how does he say these things and think that he's the person who looks good in this example? So he's basically saying he asked the Prime Minister of the UK, Keir Starmer, to help him open the Strait of Hormuz by sending minesweepers. Keir Starmer does the responsible thing, and he says, well, hold on, let me ask my team. Let's game this out. We have to think about our own national interests before we go and help you, before we spend money, you know, reopening the strait, checking for mines. And then he comes back once the situation, I guess, is de-escalated, and he says, yeah, we can send 2 aircraft carriers over there to help relieve the pressure off the United States. Then Trump turns around and says, well, we're already winning now, so we don't need your help, and you should have helped us sooner. He sounds like a mad, bitter girlfriend. That's what he sounds like. Oh, well, you didn't buy me this on Valentine's Day, and so don't even try to buy it for me later because now it doesn't mean anything. Like, does he hear himself? Like, that's what he sounds like. He sounds like a bitter woman. This guy, man, like, it's totally incredible.
So, you know, those things are very disappointing. And you have to remember, we have 45,000 troops in Japan. We have 45,000 troops in South Korea. We have 45,000, 50,000 troops in Germany. We defend all these countries. And then, do you have any minesweepers? And they say, well, would it be possible for us not to get involved? I've been saying it for a long time. This is the greatest thing to come out of this. We spend trillions and trillions of dollars on NATO to defend other countries. And I always said, but if it ever comes time to defend us, they're not going to be there. Many of them would not be there. And we're going to have to start thinking more wisely in this country. Some have been very good. 1 or 2 have been great. I'll tell you who the great ones are at the right time. But there have been some that were right up there, Peter. They were right up there. They wanted to do it so much.
That's just a lie. That's just not true.
You were talking about Iran a couple times today and what they did after Epic Fury began. You said they hit Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait. Nobody expected that. We were shocked. Are you surprised that nobody briefed you ahead of time?
Like, how would you be, like, how could you ever be surprised by something that obvious? People have been saying this for years. People have been saying, well, if a war with Iran escalates, they might close the Strait of Hormuz. They might do proxy terror attacks on Israel. They might strike our military installations across the region. People have been saying this since time immemorial. So for Trump to be caught off guard by that, the most obvious tactical move that the Iranians would pull to hurt us is incredible. It's truly incredible. How could you not anticipate the most obvious move ever? Like, how else are they going to make it hurt? They can't beat us with a ground force. They can't beat us with fighter jets. They can't beat us with tanks or ships. So they have to fight asymmetrically. It's just like common sense. It's just common sense.
That might be their retaliation.
Nobody, no.
That's just a lie. That's just a straight up lie. He's saying nobody briefed. Let's let him just say that one more time.
Bahrain, Kuwait, nobody expected that. We were shocked. Are you surprised that nobody briefed you ahead of time that might be?
He's asking, are you surprised nobody briefed you ahead of time? That's not true. People briefed Trump on this. He just can't come out and say, well, they briefed me on it, but I decided to do it anyways. Because then he'd look like an idiot. He'd look like an idiot. Of course he was briefed on this. Give me a break.
Their retaliation.
Nobody.
We are literally at that point now where we just have to assume Trump lies about literally everything. Like, like if he says something, just assume he's lying. From the get, just assume it's a lie.
No. The greatest experts, nobody thought they were going to hit. They were, I wouldn't say friendly countries. They were like neutral. They lived with them for years. Peter, they were going to take over the Middle East. They were going to knock out Israel with their nuclear weapon. But after we knocked out their nuclear potential weapon. Okay,
so which one is it? Is it Iran is friendly with these countries and we didn't anticipate that they were going to attack them? Or is it Iran is this existential threat to every country in the region and they were going to nuke everybody? It's like you can't have it both ways. Are they sane, rational actors? Or are they insane, religious zealots who want to destroy the world? It can't be both. It's just the contradictions are impossible to miss.
They started building missiles, thousands and thousands of missiles, and they were going to do it with missiles while they developed. These are sick people. While they developed nuclear, somehow they were going to start at a different site because that site was, you saw the site, the mountain. They were going to go into a certain area, which we know exactly where it is, and they were going to do that. And it's incredible what we've done. I tell you, the job we've done. You know, if I didn't terminate Barack Hussein Obama's Iran nuclear deal, you would right now, well, Israel would be gone. It would be incinerated. And probably the Middle East likewise.
That's just such a lie. Like, that's just an obvious... Never mind. It's just an obvious lie. You guys know that's a lie. That's just total... I hate to say it, but that's just total, like, Jewish talking points. That's total Jewish hysteria. That's just not real.
And remember, they got all of
they weren't going to destroy the Middle East for no reason. That's just no. That's fake.
Those missiles. And I heard they were sending missiles to UAE. I said, that's strange. You know, UAE is like...
And here's the funny thing. They haven't started a war with any country. Iran, since 1979, has never started a war with any country. Not a single one. You know who has? Israel. In 82. In 2006. In 2012. In 2014. In 2020, well, actually, no, that was a terrorist attack. That wasn't them. But Israel has started many wars. So, no, this idea, no, give me a break. Talking about starting wars. They're starting a war with Lebanon right now. It's just no. Iran has not started any wars. Israel is the one who keeps starting wars. Let's get that straight.
Banker for Iran. They're like the banker. Qatar, their neighbors, they got along okay. Saudi Arabia. All of a sudden, Kuwait is getting hit. Bahrain is getting... All these countries are getting hit.
Because they host military bases. Why else? And they feed oil to Europe and the United, and just it's just not even. Never mind.
There was no expert that would say that was going to
He's just
happen.
obviously
It's not a
wrong.
question of like, gee, should you have known? And if we did know, big deal. I mean, we have to do what we have to do. But we hit them so hard like nobody's ever been hit. We hit them very hard. And we've extinguished most of their missiles. We've extinguished most of their drones. We've extinguished most of the places where the missiles and the drones are built. We've fully extinguished 2 layers of leadership and probably a third, if you believe some stories. So we only have one thing, to have a little choke point, and they've used it very well for years, but it doesn't work. But I think this, if some of these countries that we've been good to for years, and maybe more important than that, some of these countries that get 90% and 95% of their energy from Hormuz, the Strait. Hormuz, a famous, wonderful, beautiful place, but you wouldn't want to be necessarily sailing a boat there right now.
I would not.
Okay, you know why? Not because of them, because of us. Because we've taken out their entire navy. We've taken out every one of their drone, they call it a drone layer, a mine layer. There's specific boats that are meant to put mines on. How would you like to have a nation that has 22 boats where their sole function, they're very different looking boats. You wouldn't want one for your family. They're not pretty. Their sole function is to lift a mine into the water and drop it a certain number of feet down. But they had 22 of them. We've taken out all of them. But you can probably drop them off on the boats. So we don't even know. By the way, we don't know that any mines have even been dropped. But the thought that they would
I'm just assuming he's lying about literally everything at this point.
scares people that have billion-dollar ships. Yeah, please.
Thank you, President Trump. I'd like to ask the Vice President about his plans to go after possible fraud in California and New York. We know, of course, about Minnesota. And President Trump, first could ask you, you said earlier today that the new Supreme Leader, Mutawwid Khomeini, you don't know if he's dead or alive. There are a couple interesting reports about him today. There's one report that he just narrowly escaped death in the first airstrikes by stepping out into his garden. There's another report that he may actually be gay despite leading a theocracy that hangs gay people. How do you determine what's true, and do you have an assessment of this?
Well, so far nobody knows. If you look at his father, he used to give talks a lot, talking about death to America. He'd say death to America all the time. When they say death to America, you should believe them, because that's what they would have. If they had a nuclear weapon, they would have used it. But they never had the chance. I never gave them the chance to use it. And other presidents should have done. I spoke to one of the former presidents who I actually like. I actually speak to some. I do like some people. It'd be shocking. And he said, I wish I did what you did. Could have done it. Other presidents, somebody should have done it. 47 years this went on. They call Iran the bully of the Middle East. And you could have never had the Abraham Accords. You could never have had peace in the Middle East. Now you're going to have peace. You could never do it with the dark cloud of a nuclear Iran. But Iran is a shell of itself. It's no longer a bully. It's the one that gets bullied. It's a bully that got beat up. We beat the crap out of them. And they deserve that.
And this is just like rhetoric. That's just rhetoric. Oh, we beat the crap out of them. They're the bully that got beat up. How are they the bully? Who have they been bullying exactly? Israel is a bully. Israel bullies the Palestinians, and they've been bullying the Palestinians since time immemorial. The United States is a bully. We bullied Iraq. We bullied Libya. We bullied Syria. What is he talking about? Bully. This is like, who sees international politics in these terms? Only a child does. Only a child looks at international politics using this bullied, non-bullied framework. I'm just using it because Trump is using it, but it's just obviously retarded.
When you see a soldier walking down the street without his arms, or being helped down the street because he's got no legs, or his face is blown to smithereens with no legs and no arms, those two, no legs, no arms, and a face that got racked. That was done by roadside bombs. That's the favorite weapon of Soleimani, who I killed in my first administration, General Soleimani, had I not killed him, that was the beginning of their downfall, because had he not gone, it's possible that we would not be this far advanced in destroying Iran, because he was a really good general. He was a vicious, horrible man, but he was a brilliant general. And he was looking to knock out 5 of our military bases at one time. And the man that died with him was his counterpart in Iraq. And they were working together. And they got hit real hard. And if that didn't happen, we would have had a problem. But maybe more importantly than that, he was really the mastermind behind it. And they never found somebody to replace him in terms of the genius. I knocked him out. And that was a big step, knocking him out. But if we didn't get rid of the Obama deal, I terminated it against the wishes of my then Secretary of State. He was no Marco. Against the wishes of a lot of people at the time. You remember that, Peter? A lot of people. Had I not terminated, remember that, Stephen? You remember? They were all going, no, this is not, that deal was a disaster. That was a road to a nuclear weapon. They would have had it 3 years ago.
That's just totally fake. Like, that's just a patent lie. That's just a straight up lie. There wasn't a single time while the JCPOA was active until Trump destroyed it in 2018. There wasn't a single time where they failed an inspection, where they had a greater stockpile than what was allowed, where they exceeded the threshold, where they enriched past a certain percentage, where they were using advanced models of their centrifuges. Not once did they ever violate any of the conditions in the JCPOA. That is just not true. Not once did they try to race towards a nuclear weapon. That's just patently false. That's just false. That's just a lie. So, once again, another lie from this deranged guy.
And it would have been used, I would say, 2 to 3 years ago, and it would have been used in the Middle East. And by the way, after they were finished that, they were coming over here. They never got a chance to do it.
I just want to ask you about something very interesting that you said twice today. That you talked to another former president about the Iran strikes.
I did.
Was it George W. Bush?
No.
Was it Bill Clinton?
I don't want to say. I don't want to say. Because
Barack Obama?
a member of a party, they have Trump derangement syndrome, but it's somebody that happens to like me, and I like that person who's
Okay, I feel like he's lying. I feel like he's lying about that. So let me actually check that. Real-time fact-checking. Huh, look at this. It says all former presidents deny Trump's claim. Then again, they could be lying to save their own face, so who knows? All right, I want to see this because who knows? It says, as of March 17th, 2026, representatives for all 4 living former U.S. presidents, Joe Biden, Barack Obama, George W. Bush, and Bill Clinton, have denied President Donald Trump's claim that one of them privately expressed support for his military strikes on Iran and the killing of Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. This is from the Huffington Post, which is liberal media, so, you can't really trust these people either. But all these people could be lying. Trump could be lying. Clinton, Bush, Biden, Obama, they could be lying. But I'm inclined to believe in this case that Trump is the one who's lying. Because why would they support this? When did Bush go in? Never. When did Clinton go in? Never. Did Obama or Biden go in? No, they didn't. So obviously they wouldn't be supporting. I mean, they're Democrats too. Clinton, Democrat. Biden, Democrat. Obama, Democrat. None of them ever supported strikes in Iran. They always favored, I don't know about Clinton, but I know Biden and Obama favored diplomacy. So that leaves Clinton and Bush. And, I don't believe that Bush and Clinton called up Trump and were like, hey man, really good stuff with those strikes on Iran. I think that's total hogwash. And until we get confirmation on that, you got to just assume Trump is lying at this point.
A smart person, but that person said, I wish I did it. Okay, but I don't want to get into who.
Okay.
I don't want to get him into trouble.
That's just bullshit.
Maybe, hey,
I have a guess.
you know what? Yeah, I think you probably know. You know, it's interesting. And maybe he'd be proud. And I could even ask him that, would you like me to reveal your name to Peter at Fox? Well, at least you have high ratings. Your ratings are through the roof, Peter.
Yeah, thank you for noticing.
Congratulations.
Can I ask you another question about the war? If Iran, as you said, totally obliterated, got the missiles, got the first 2 rounds of leadership, Air Force gone, Navy gone, can we wrap this war up this week?
Yeah, sure. Good.
Will we?
I don't think so, but it'll be soon. Won't be long. And we're going to have a much safer world when it's wrapped up. It'll be wrapped up soon. We're going to have a much safer world. I had an obligation to do this. I didn't want to, I call it an excursion. I didn't want to make this journey. We had the highest stock market in history. We had low gas prices. Everything was good. And I know exactly, I know what, you're going to do it, and people are going to raise the price of oil, and that's good. But I know that. But that's a very small thing compared to allowing them to have, you want to see a stock market go down? Start letting them hit you with nukes, okay? I think, I said it this morning, I think it's a very small price to pay. And frankly, I thought it was going to go down much more, if you want to know the truth. I assumed that it was going to go down much more, only because people don't understand to a large, it's a big chess game at a very high level. It's a very high level chess, the highest. And I'm dealing with very smart players. These are smart people. They don't get there. You know, when you deal with some of these people, you're dealing with high level intellect, very high IQ people. These are not Jasmine Crockett and her group. These are smart people.
That was
These
a good
are really
one.
smart people, and violent people, and vicious people, and some very nice people. And some are very nice but violent. They turn violent.
And it's,
But you know what? If I didn't do what I did, we would have been hit. Number one, very important, was the termination of Obama's horrible deal, and number two, this beautiful plane hitting them 8 months ago, whatever it was, and taking out their nuclear capacity. That totally threw them for a loop. If they had that bomb at either time, 5 years ago or 7 months ago, if they had that bomb would have been used almost immediately.
That's just this is just straight up propaganda. I think that should be obvious at this point. That's what this is. This is not true at all.
Mr. President, 2 questions on domestic policy, bringing it close to home. First of all, the Save America Act. What are you expecting this week when this vote takes place in the U.S. Senate? Will the Vice President's vote be?
I think it's imperative that it gets done. I'm not sure it is. You know, the Democrats have horrible policy.
True.
It's just incredible. But they stick together. It's the one thing they do. Their Supreme Court members stick together. Those appointed by a Democrat stick together. If Barack Hussein Obama appoints a member of the Supreme Court, that member never goes against him. And they're proud about it. They say, I don't give a damn if it's good or bad. That man appointed me, and I'm never going to let him down. I don't say that's right, wrong. I just say they stick together. Republicans go the opposite way. If Donald Trump appointed me, I'm going to show the world that I can be totally just and I can be independent of Donald Trump.
You have been
He's not
listening to
controlling
President Donald
I don't know how how could anybody not, if you care at all about this country and think there's anything about this country worth defending, worth preserving, anything sacred about this country, which I believe there is, you would support the SAVE Act. Like there's just no way you wouldn't. To not support that act is, I don't even understand. It's just insane.
Trump from
Like
the
to not support that act, to not support voter ID, you're You're just brainwashed with this liberal bullshit. I'm sorry.
Oval Office, delivering remarks on the war with Iran and answering questions from reporters.
By the way, this is in 1080p. I don't know why the quality is so low. This looks like shit, but whatever. So anyways, that's the Trump interview. I want to react to this as well. This is from earlier today. I mean, this actually just came out only a few hours ago. It says, top Trump advisor Joe Kent, senior U.S. intelligence official, is stepping down from his post. Citing misgivings about the administration's war with Iran. Get that. So our guy, Joe Kent, who is, I think at one point he was trying to be senator in Washington a few years ago. Apparently he is stepping down from helping this administration. So let's take a look at this, see what our guy Joe Kent has to say.
We just learned, get this, the director of the National Counterterrorism Center, Joe Kent, has just announced he's resigning. CNN national security reporter Zachary Cohn is joining us right now. Zachary, what more can you tell us about this dramatic development?
Yeah, Wolf, this appears to be a significant resignation at the senior-most levels of the Trump intelligence community. This is Joe Kent. He was the director of the National Counterterrorism Center. He
is a handsome guy.
Appearing to post on X a resignation letter that he submitted, citing misgivings over the Trump administration's decision to launch its war with Iran. Now, Kent, in this letter, writes in part, quote, as a veteran who deployed to combat 11 times and as a Gold Star husband who lost my beloved wife, Shannon, in a war manufactured by Israel, I cannot support sending the next generation off to fight and die in a war that serves no benefit to the American people, nor justifies the cost of American lives. Now, Kent, in his apparent post on X, does also seem to suggest that there was no imminent threat that it has been used and cited by the Trump administration as justification for launching this war against Iran. He says that essentially the administration manufactured this idea of an imminent threat, and that is part of the reason why he is deciding to resign from his post today.
Let me read a little bit from this letter that he wrote to President Trump. This is Joseph Kent. He works for the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. But he writes this, he says, I cannot in good conscience support the ongoing war in Iran. Iran posed no imminent threat to our nation, and it is clear that we started this war due to pressure from Israel and its powerful American lobby. I support the values and the foreign policies that you campaigned on in 2016, 2020, 2024, which you enacted in your first term. Until June of 2025, you understood that the wars in the Middle East were a trap that robbed America of the precious lives of our patriots and depleted the wealth and prosperity of our nation. And he added this. In your first administration, you understood better than any modern president how to decisively apply military power without getting us drawn into never-ending wars. You demonstrated this by killing Qasem Soleimani and by defeating ISIS. He goes on and says more, Sabrina, but those are powerful words.
Yeah.
I think what's also important here is
that's just on the mind. Everything he just said there was true. Literally everything he just said there was a fact. Yes, forever wars suck. Yes, they do hurt our country economically. Yes, they do create more political catastrophes, more humanitarian crises. They do nothing to benefit our country. And yes, Trump betrayed his promises. Everything he said there was literally a fact. Thank you for stepping down, Joe. Thank you.
This is an appointee that was not someone that you could consider not aligned with the president. I mean, this is someone that espoused the MAGA-based views and was appointed by, of course, Tulsi Gabbard. And so the fact that he has issued a very public resignation and the fact that he's also said that Iran did not pose an imminent threat to the United States, a case that was made by Donald Trump multiple times and many other officials in this administration, including the Secretary of Defense, Pete.
Because it's just true. Of course they never posed an imminent threat. Who believes that? Who believes that shit? I don't understand how anybody could ever. There has so much evidence to suggest there was no imminent threat. We live in bizarro world. We live in a fake reality. That's the conclusion I'm at this point.
Hegseth, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, saying that Iran posed an immediate threat to the United States. And he's someone that clearly had access to intelligence matters, saying that they did not. I think you could potentially see other resignations from this administration, people deep within the MAGA base that do not support this war of choice. And frankly, it is a war of choice. It is something that the president chose to do. And he has said, kind of on his own conscience, that he decided to initiate this war as well.
Yeah, he even said that he got Israel on board.
Yes.
But in this letter, Joe Kent says he believes that this is started because of pressure from Israel and its American lobby. I'm wondering, General, what you think about one of the last lines here. He says, "You can reverse course and chart a new path for our nation, or you can allow us to slip further toward decline and chaos. You hold the cards." I'm wondering at this point, several weeks into this war, you have Iran saying that the Strait of Hormuz will never go back to the conditions where it was before. How do you chart a new course?
He needs to cut his losses, that being President Trump. He needs to cut his losses and shut this down as quick as he possibly can. That would be the best thing at this solution. I'm not sure if he's got the capability, the wherewithal to actually do that politically. But I mean, this is not going well, and it's going to get worse. And bully for Mr. Joe Kent for having the political courage to stand up for what he believes. This is a guy that's a big-time MAGA supporter, has always been, very much like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who you had on your show yesterday. Mm-hmm. I mean, these are significant resignations from the MAGA world, and people need to take note. And I hope that this leads to the resignation of other members of the administration, because he is absolutely spot on target. This is not in the best interest of the United States to continue this war, and President Trump needs to shut it down as quickly as he possibly can.
Let me read another sentence or two from his resignation letter. As a veteran who deployed to combat 11 times, and as a Gold Star husband who lost my beloved wife Shannon in a war manufactured by Israel, I cannot support sending the next generation off to fight and die in a war that serves no benefit.
What a patriot. Now that is a patriot. That is a patriot. That is admirable. I didn't know his wife died in combat. Jeez.
To the American people.
In a war manufactured by Israel. So I'm assuming he's talking about Iraq. That's the only war manufactured by Israel in recent memory that I can think of.
Or justifies the cost of American lives.
Yeah. No, I mean, we've already seen.
It's like finally somebody with principles, somebody who has some balls, somebody with principles, somebody with balls, somebody with a conscience. Finally, somebody who's not just this sycophant for Trump. So refreshing.
15 American service members die in this war. Over 200 have been injured, and their conditions have ranged from very serious to some have been returned to duty. But I think, we've heard Pete Hegseth say this time and again, that more Americans could lose their lives. And I think this letter makes it very clear. Is that worth it? Is that worth the cost? And this is someone that's obviously gone to war on behalf of our country and seen the cost that it takes, not just on the people who are putting their lives on the line, but on the country. And so I think it is really important that not only is he putting this out today, but this is someone that is a deep figure within the MAGA base and someone that is aligned with the president and is breaking very publicly with him.
And it's personal for him, as you noted, Wolf, that his wife was killed in Syria in 2019 by an ISIS bomber. I just want to go back to you, General. Clearly, you don't agree with this war. But at the same time, Israel is saying that it has taken out more top Iranian officials, including one who has been overseeing a lot of what Iran has been doing in its counterattacks. And I just wonder if you see any progress, any benefit so far from this war in terms of safety toward the United States because of some of the people who have been taken out.
First of all, I commend the military performance thus far in the war. I mean, it's been superb. And look, no one's shedding any tears for the Khomeini's demise and a new Ayatollah and the aggressive nature that they have had towards in the region and been a threat in the region. I mean, I'm all for doing something about the Iranians.
I don't understand this aggressive threat, this aggressive posture in the region talking point that everybody keeps bringing up. They've been on defense since the war started. They've been on defense since the regime came to power. And once again, I don't support the regime. I think the regime is, quite frankly, sick. I don't like it. But this idea that they've been on offense since 1979 is just not true. It's just not real. That's not actually a thing. Hezbollah was not created until 1982 when Lebanon was invaded. And they triggered this massive massacre in the country. And then, of course, there was the Iran-Iraq War. And what was happening during the Iran-Iraq War? The United States was supplying Saddam Hussein with the precursor materials that they would then invade the country in 2003 for, because they were being accused of using those precursor materials to build weapons of mass destruction. During the Iran-Iraq War, Ronald Reagan was sending mustard gas, precursors, anthrax, West Nile virus. This is in the Regal Report from 1994. We were sending Saddam Hussein all kinds of stuff, all kinds of dual-use technology. That's what they call it, dual-use technology. We were sending him all kinds of dual-use stuff that he was using to slaughter Iranians. And they're not the ones who provoked that war. And the reason we supported Iraq in their campaign against Iran was to prevent Iran from being a satellite or an outpost for the Soviet Union. So I don't understand this idea. They've been on defense. They have been defending their regime. They've been defending their sovereignty, their territory. They've been under attack since 1979. They've been fighting off constant sabotage, wars since their founding. I don't understand this idea that like they're the aggressor in this region. That's just not true. That's not real. That's just totally fabricated.
But we were not provoked. And the problem here is that we're in the middle of a long war, at least a long war for them. I mean, I remember what Henry Kissinger said about Vietnam. He said that, the Americans will lose by not winning, and the Vietnamese will win by not losing. The Iranians just want to sustain themselves, stay in power as long as they possibly can, continue to harass the United States, like attacking Baghdad and the embassy there and whatnot, and stay alive long enough so that they can claim victory. And that's what they will do if they do this long enough.
Let's go actually to the White House, where we're going to find our Kevin Liptak, who's been tracking any responses coming from the administration. What's the latest, Kevin?
Yeah, nothing official yet from the president, although we're expecting to see him any moment now in the Oval Office with the Taoiseach of Ireland. He's here for St. Patrick's Day. But you do hear, officials who are within the Trump orbit beginning to sound off on this. One former White House official described Joe Kent as an egomaniac, someone who is resigning this position in quite a high.
And now they're going to try assassinating his character because he stood on his principles and he has a conscience. So they're just going to totally retcon this guy and assassinate his character. Typical.
Profile fashion, and I think that is probably along the lines of what we will hear from the president if and when he decides to respond to this. But I do think it will be difficult for him to entirely dismiss this resignation as someone, with Trump derangement syndrome, as someone who is a Trump enemy, as he does so often, just because Joe Kent has so often aligned himself with the president. He is of the MAGA wing of the party. That's how he ran as a candidate for Congress 2 times in Washington state, and it is why he was selected for this position in the first place. His confirmation was not an easy one by any means. He was, very narrowly confirmed by the Senate, and all of these questions about conspiracies around the 2020 election, about potential ties to white nationalists, all arose in his confirmation hearings. And for all of those reasons, I think it will be difficult for the president to sort of entirely distance himself from this individual who is now coming out very publicly decrying some of the perceived rationale for the war in Iran. And I do think it will also put in a very difficult...
Is that even real? Is Joe Kent actually a white nationalist? Because I remember him being the guy who was like, he turned away Nick Fuentes for those very reasons. He says Nick Fuentes talks too much about white people and religion. And that's the reason why Nick Fuentes tried to sink his run in Washington. And he actually ended up losing, I believe. So I don't know if that's true or not. Maybe. But I remember him being the guy who was like, we need to talk about multiracial working class populism. Doesn't sound like white nationalism to me, but I don't know.
Position.
It's politics. People lie all the time.
Joe Kent's boss, the director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, who has espoused, in previous lives, the very same positions about questioning the adventurism of previous iterations of the Republican Party, questioning nation-building pursuits. She, too, was a veteran, just like Joe Kent, and so putting her, I think, in a difficult position. But certainly we expect to hear from the president very soon, and hopefully he will be asked about all of this.
We'll see what he says. All right, Kevin Liptak, thank you very, very much. I want to bring in CNN K-File senior editor Andrew Kaczynski, who's joining us on the phone. Andrew, I know you had previously reported that Joe Kent gave a previously unreported interview back in 2022 to Grayson Arnold, a Nazi sympathizer and white nationalist. A spokesperson for Kent, who was then running for Congress at the time, said, and I'm quoting him now, Joe Kent had no idea who that individual was when he encountered him on the street, and Joe Kent has repeatedly condemned the statements that the individual is accused of making, end quote. Andrew, what more can you tell us about Kent's past?
Well, look, Joe Kent's resignation is dramatic, but it's really not particularly surprising if you look at his record. He's a former Green Beret. He did numerous tours overseas. His first wife, Shannon, was a military member who was killed overseas in a suicide bombing in Syria that targeted U.S. troops. What's remarkable here, too, is that he entered politics in 2021 to primary a Republican who had actually voted to impeach Trump. He had 2 failed bids for Congress. And when he entered politics, he specifically said it was in part because he witnessed, and this is a direct quote from one of his videos launching his campaign, the failures of the government establishment in keeping us at war in the Middle East, watching officials, as he said, quote, lie about regime change wars. And during that campaign, both campaigns, he railed against the military-industrial complex. He railed against endless wars. In one of the interviews he gave, he literally said, let's not start a new war with Iran. That was a 2021 interview. At the same time, as you mentioned, he has been a polarizing figure during his congressional run. He did face repeated scrutiny over contacts with far-right figures and extremist figures, which he later disavowed. And of course, he works for Tulsi Gabbard, who before joining the administration.
I do remember. I think he made a pact with Nick Fuentes. And it was like, Nick Fuentes was like, I'll endorse you. And Joe Kent was like, yeah, but just keep it on the low. And then once it became politically toxic to be associated with Nick Fuentes, then he disavowed strategically. So I don't know if those are his actual views. Maybe they are, maybe they're not, but certainly not a good look.
And had a long history of opposing war with Iran. And not that long ago, just 5-6 years ago, she was literally selling, as she ran for Congress, merchandise that said no war with Iran on her campaign website. So this also puts a lot of questions at her, as has been mentioned here. But ultimately, I do think that his resignation here reflects his longstanding opposition to American intervention abroad.
I wonder if Joe Kent has actually interviewed or commented on this. Oh, let's see what Trump said.
Mr. President, your director of national counterterrorism, Joe Kent, he just resigned today. He said he can't support your conflict with Iran. What's your reaction to that? And did you talk
Well, I read his statement. I always thought he was a nice guy, but I always thought he was weak on security, very weak on security. I didn't know him well, but I thought he seemed like a pretty nice guy. But when I read his statement, I realized that it's a good thing that he's out, because he said that Iran was not a threat. Iran was a threat. Every country realized what a threat.
I don't understand how he can. It doesn't make any sense. Like, Trump comes out and says Iran is a paper tiger on multiple occasions. They're weak. They have these old military tanks. I mean, we just reacted to a 36 or a 30-minute 30-minute video where he's taking questions from these reporters. And in that video, he's talking about Iran has these 20 boats that are only used for laying sea mines. He's mocking their military capacity. He's calling them weak. He's saying they're weak and they're a paper tiger. But then he turns around and says Iran is this massive threat to the United States. It's incoherent. It is contradictory. Are they a paper tiger with a weak military, or are they this existential threat to the world? It can't be both. It can't be both.
Iran was. The question is whether or not they wanted to do something about it. And many people, many of the greatest military scholars are saying for years that president should have taken out Iran because they wanted a nuclear weapon. They were, if we didn't do the attack, or if, I'll go a step further, if I didn't terminate the Iran nuclear deal given to us, one of the worst deals ever made by Barack Hussein Obama. Remember when they sent Boeing 757s over there, loaded with cash? Hundreds of millions of dollars. You would have been very happy. This was a wonderful, they sent hundreds of millions. People forget that. Does anybody remember? Right? You remember. Hundreds of millions of dollars in a Boeing 757. I think they had two of them loaded. They took the seats out and they put cash. And it was so much that there wasn't a bank in Virginia, Maryland, or D.C. that had any money left. They stripped them of all their money, put it into place, sent it to Iran almost as ransom. That's not going to happen with Trump. And nobody ever did anything about it. Nobody ever said anything. Can you imagine if I did that? So they've been a threat for a long time. But they've really been a threat. If I didn't terminate Obama's horrible deal that he made, the Iran nuclear deal, you would have had a nuclear war 4 years ago. You would have had nuclear holocaust.
Oh,
and you would have had
nuclear holocaust, really? Oh, there we go. Love it. It's just the terminology. It's like straight out of a neocon playbook. Straight out of a neocon playbook. It just doesn't get better than this.
If we didn't bomb the site. So when somebody is working with us that says they didn't think Iran was a threat, we don't want those people because, and there are some people I guess that would say that, but they're not smart people or they're not savvy people. Iran was a tremendous threat. And virtually every NATO nation, and this is the thing, if they told me it wasn't a threat, and therefore they don't want to help, but when they say it was a threat, and it was a major threat, every one of them, I think every one of them, I don't know of one that said they're not a threat, but when they say it was a threat, but we're not going to help, I think they're very foolish.
So it's just fake news once again about they're sending whatchamacallit, they're sending money on Boeing. That's just not true. Like he's talking about settlements being resolved with the Iranians over things that happened in the 1970s. It's decades old disputes that should have been settled a long time ago. This is just insane. God, this guy is just totally mentally lost. All right, I think we can end it here. Yeah, what a disaster. Jesus.